friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average babes come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A place where being yourself is the ultimate goal, where your opinion, your story, and your individual experience matters. Join me, your host B, and my guests for real and raw talks every week, laying it all out there so we can all help each other learn more, grow deeper, and evolve collectively. Now keep in mind, as a disclaimer, no one here is an expert and no one is giving any advice. This is strictly our opinions, thoughts, feelings, and for entertainment purposes only. Now with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, watcher, supporter, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I'm the host of the show, and today you guys are on episode 173, Being Real with Unrestricted Learning. Now, you guys, I'm so excited because not only is this a returning guest, it is someone that I look up to so much in so many different ways, but especially the homeschooling space. I have been watching this girl for years. We have been fangirling for years over each other. I've had her on the show before talking about homeschooling, and I am so excited to share her growth today and what she has done in the community and what she continues to do. This girl's a big goal chaser, a big dream maker, and she is helping families all over Canada now be able to take some responsibility and take the schooling and education of their kids into their own hands. And I fucking love it. But before we get on to this amazing episode, I just want to remind you, if you are listening on the video platforms like YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify, you can like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you're listening just to audio on Spotify or Apple, Google, wherever you listen to audio podcasts, you can also turn on notifications and leave me a review if you guys can. That helps so much. And also, if you're looking to find me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at the Be Real Babe podcast. You can also find me on Pinterest at the Be Real Babe podcast and on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. I am going to be working on other stuff. That is why I have bumped it up, and you guys know I was hacked, so I lost some stuff. Also, if you are trying to follow me on YouTube, please make sure you do not follow the old account. I put out a call to action to everybody. I love you guys so much, but some of you did follow the old account. And so I'm probably going to post on there for a little bit and try and draw you guys over to the new one. So make sure you're please finding the new one. You'll be able to tell because you'll be able to see the theme, the black and pink, and purple and green on there. So please make sure to go like, subscribe, follow, all those things I'm supposed to tell you to do. I'm not a fancy YouTuber, guys. I don't fucking know. But if you can, it really helps me because I really enjoy this. And it means a lot to me when you guys support me. And also, as usual, if you have a story, if you want to have your own show, make sure you reach out to me. I'm more than willing and happy to have you, every individual on the show. Everyone has a story and I am here for it. So I'm going to shut the fuck up because it's the longest lead in ever and get to this amazing fire episode with Unrestricted Learning. All right, babes, it's time to get on to the show. And with me today, I have a very special guest returning for her second time. I'd like to welcome Lindsay with Unrestricted Learning back to the show. Hey, babe, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming back for round 2 and catch up on how you doing. So excited.
Right? I'm happy
I
to
was
be
like,
here.
I
Excited.
know, so funny, guys. So our first episode was episode 89. We just looked back. It was October 28th, 2022. And for some reason, it just seems like from like 2020 to now has just been a blur. I don't really know times or dates anymore. Like,
There are no, we're
was
just
that
in
2
like a
years ago,
blur
3
of,
years ago, a year ago?
I don't
I don't know. I've lost track of time. But
right?
anyways, welcome back to the show. Before we get into today's topic, though, do you want to give us a little breakdown of who you are, as if you've never been on the show and no one has heard your first episode?
All right. Well, my name's Lindsay. We got that out of the way. I am a homeschool mama. I just have one little guy at home, and yeah, so that's what I do with him. My husband works away, so it's just me and my little guy a lot of the time. We are pretty active family. We like to snowboard 2 to 3 times a week. We go biking as soon as the summer comes. Yeah, and then in terms of what we do outside of all of our family stuff is I've created Unrestricted Learning, which is both a homeschool mentorship coaching program, I guess you would call it, as well as a community for us to do field trips and get-togethers and kind of connect with other homeschool families and get that social aspect in there for my only child homeschooler because, that's a little bit weird, but we do
Weird.
it.
I love it so much. The first episode we had, I learned so much and from you. So I was just so excited because not only your growth, but I think it's more common than not that people are looking into homeschooling than I think ever was. I think you probably could agree to that. And I think it was, we had said that in your last episode, it's kind of the perfect timing because people were really questioning and you kind of already had a little bit under your belt as you started and just showing everyone the ways that you can train at home. Like I had no idea, not train, that sounds terrible. Teach, I should say, right word, teach, train your children. Was just so cool to me. And I never even thought that, even talking to my friends, I was like, just as parents, like you said, if even if you're in a conventional school, you could still do these methods that you teach to teach them outside stuff because schools don't always teach real life stuff, right? It's like cool, you could teach them how to use a calculator, but they get up to the till, you know, that's the skill that they don't really teach in school, like social skills kind of. So um let's start from the very beginning on kind of where that spawned for you. Kind of, was that because of you being a first time mom? Is that something that was in your family?
For us, homeschooling wasn't in our family, either my husband's or mine. We both did go to traditional school. Um, with his schedule, my husband's schedule, and him being away 15 days and only home 6, we suddenly realized that if we utilized traditional school, he would only see B like 2 days a month, which is crazy when you think about that. And it's just like even with what they see and how much time they get together, it's never enough,
Yeah,
obviously.
totally.
So yeah, 2 days a month just was very unrealistic for us. On top of that, we did have a pretty significant loss. I lost my sister in 2018. So just knowing the value of time and knowing that like what's important in life, right? So to send him to a building and sit in a space for 8 hours when we could be hiking or we could be biking or we could be, it's like I can teach him, like we can figure out the math and the science and the reading, and we just need the time and like the connection, and he needs like, just other things. So
Totally.
with all of those experiences and then our life the way it is and our schedule, we were like, this is the path. On top of that, I worked at the library when he was really little. So right after my, what do you call it? Baby leave,
Maternity
mat
leave?
leave. Right
Paternity leave?
after
Mat leave?
my
Yeah.
mat leave ended. Yeah,
Yeah.
maternity leave, right? I was like, whatever it's
Yeah.
called.
That one, whatever. Baby time off.
Peeing. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
baby thing that you do when you have one of those. That was a
Yeah.
while ago.
When you
Uh,
when your
so
vagina is healing. Yeah, vagina healing
yeah,
time.
exactly. So you take that time, and then I was going back to work, and I found a job at the library, and he was able to come with me. So
Oh,
5 days
perfect.
a week. So we started with 2 days a week, and then it moved up to 5 days a week. So from the time he was 1 year old till the time he was 4, we went to the library up to 5 days a week. And I was like, he's learning so much. He never went to pre-K, he didn't go to daycare. And I was like, I don't really understand the reasons for these things because he's doing the things. So then I
Totally.
realized you can kind of like teach him those things and find all of what you need outside of the norm, because the norm at his age was to be in pre-K and was to be in daycare, and he wasn't in those spaces yet. He was super social and he was super smart and I'm like, we're good. So I guess just between our life experiences and our schedule, it just became the path.
I love that so much. Like honestly, you're absolutely right because really when it comes to education and teaching, it's really essentially a checklist, right? So it's like, how many people do we know that we grew up that had learning issues that maybe if they were in a homeschool or a one-on-one situation, they would be able to learn and absorb the information better because it's coming from someone they care about in a comfortable space where they're familiar with and they're free, they know that they're free to express themselves and be wrong and like push the boundaries, and you've created that space. And so I think more and more when people are learning about the massive positives and like the time, like I even get that Grant is on the exact same schedule. We don't have kids, but I work. So I get Saturday and Sunday. And sometimes, like in the month of April, just the way the weeks work out, we get 2 days. Full days together in that whole entire month because he's gone for the first 15, he's home for 5, and he's gone for the last 15. So I work, so I get Saturday, Sunday, so in all the month of April, we get 2 days. And so I can imagine that's 10 times harder, especially at those formidable ages. And like, I think this is where there is an inequality to parents when moms are able to spend more time than dads. And so I think it's super beautiful that you recognize that he's not going to have that time, and that you wanted to create more of that to create the relationship, which I think a lot of, sorry, no shade, kids are missing, is their relationships with their parents. Not because, I'm not saying that's anyone's fault, just inflation and having to work and all of that. So the fact that you guys you've seen that it works with your lifestyle, your honey can keep working, but you maximize your time. Like, girl, we already know I'm a huge fan. I love it. And then now branching off to want to help others, right? So then B goes to go to school, and he's never been in traditional school, or did he just go for a
He
bit? I
did go
can't
for
remember.
2020. So
Yeah.
in 2020, he was actually kindergarten age. We actually full on planned. Like I said, he never went to any traditional preschool daycare. So I didn't have any plans to ever send him. And then 2020 hit, and our library closed down, our pool closed down, and everything that I did utilize for him to get these things just disappeared. And so while I didn't utilize the school or see it as a space for his learning, I was very careful of what school I picked. I kind of picked it based on what their restrictions were. So I made sure that the kindergartens were kind of going to live fairly normal. So he was in a space where his age group was able to be mask free. They had
Mhm.
enough teachers in the class that they were able to clean things and get things like just the way that they were able to allow them to play normally. Now, there was still a lot of things that I would have loved to not been that way,
Of
of
course.
course, but it was
Take what
that
you
way
can
as
take.
as normal as it could possibly be in
Yeah,
comparison to so many other children who were in traditional school
totally.
at the time.
Yeah.
And he ended up leaving early because we again always planned on homeschooling, and it just kind of like he liked it and he enjoyed it for so long. In December, even his school teacher was like, "Oh, you planned on homeschooling? Like, if you want to pull him at any time, let us know." I actually took it as her thinking he couldn't do it, and I was like, "He can stay.
Bitch.
uh, like we can do this,
Yeah.
you know."
Yeah.
And then I realized once we did pull him, she was actually super in favor of homeschool. So I was like, "Oh,
Oh.
sorry, I read that situation really wrong. I actually didn't like you for a little bit, but cool. That's
That
nice of
happens.
you."
Growth.
Yeah,
That's what
I was like,
happens.
"You
Yeah.
guys bad."
Yeah.
But yeah, so we pulled him and never went back, and we've just kind of continued with it. But he did go for that little bit, and like I said, I very much looked at it as that's where he was socializing because again, his library programs, everything was gone. And I was very open about that with the teachers that, yeah, keep doing his work, but I'm doing stuff with him at home. So if there's something you need him to work on, please let me know. Like I will actively be doing that kind of stuff at home. And it ended up that he was like kind of surpassing those kids. He brought home books that were like, I don't know, this little book club thing that a
Love
bunch
book
of them
club.
were in.
Love
And they
book
had to
club.
read books. And yeah, I was like little kid book club. It was pretty
Yeah.
adorable, but
Fuck. It's so
whatever.
cute.
Right. So we did that, and then yeah, he just didn't go back. And we live very close to school. In fact, the friend that you just heard him ask if he could come sleep over is in traditional school. They met in kindergarten.
Cool.
So that friendship has been able to remain. He lives just down the street, and
That's awesome.
like, yeah,
And they don't
there's
get
no blame there.
treated, like, I guess that's one thing too. Like, when it comes to homeschooling, especially now, I feel like when maybe we were growing up, maybe a lot before us, it was a lot of like hate on homeschool kids. But I feel like that's just not the way of it anymore. I feel obviously there's always going to be some, you can't prevent
Like there's
all of
yeah.
it, right? Like, because
Mhm.
there's always a few. But for the majority, I feel like from my understanding, from watching, like, just on your stories, you guys are always socializing. And before you'd be like, oh, homeschooling kids, they don't get socialized. But I mean, like, sorry, just not to be rude, but what the fuck do you call after school sports and stuff like that? Like, you take away school, you still have those
Yeah.
activities. It's not like linked to school. Like, yeah, a lot of the times there is school sports, of course, but there's also outside sports. Like, y'all, what are you talking about? Like, there's tons
Mhm.
of different ways to socialize your kids in dance. Like, dance isn't generally at school, that's usually an
Right.
outside school thing. So it's kind of silly when people say that to me. And so I think now, is that fair to say that some of those misconceptions about homeschooling aren't really there anymore?
I would say that the biggest misconception has always been the socialization.
Mhm.
And in fact, I just had a call with a mama yesterday, and her and I were chatting specifically that that was one of her worries or fears. They live on a farm, and the kids go to this small school, and we just kind of talked about it. And I said, "Well, what do they do outside of school?" And she told me about them going to church and their library programs and all these things. And I said, "Well, none of that is going to change.
Mhm.
The only thing that changes is their 6 hour period during the day." in which they don't go to a building, they now stay with you, and then you can then create the schedule. And she was like, it was almost like a light bulb moment, like, wait a minute, you're right, because for her, her kids aren't really having the best experience in school, so they don't really have that social thing that we talk about
That we get
in
excited
that
for.
school setting anyways. So
Yeah.
she's like, they prefer their Sunday school friends or their dance friends or their, and I was like, well, that, like, I don't think any of that's going to go away. Are you going to suddenly pull them from dance because you pulled them from school? And she was like,
Yeah.
well, no. I'm like, okay.
Absolutely.
So that's the big thing, is like, I don't know if people think that homeschooling means we just like don't be a part of
Isolate from
society.
society. Yeah.
Yeah, like I
No.
don't know. Like D plays, baseball. He is a snowboarder. He goes to climbing. Like he's in a lot of things. It's actually a bit ridiculous. But in the summertime, it's like you're on the sports teams and people be like, oh, where does he go to school? And he's like, oh, I don't. I'm like, he's homeschooled. Like it's not like he just does nothing. Like we homeschool. And they're like, oh. And usually there'll be another one or two families that do. And
Totally.
so you're not usually even the only person in the group anymore. It's not like you're like, oh, that family homeschools. There's
Yes.
always a couple of us, and it's like he's just there socializing like normal. So I don't really, I
Yeah.
guess for me, I'm kind of like, I don't really get it because he never went to the traditional spaces for.
Yeah. And that's why I think is kind of beautiful about it, and that's from you guys like sharing that and sharing your experiences and being open to answer questions and you'd be like, I understand how some people can't do that. And I think one of the biggest things for you is that you're never against people doing traditional stuff, right? You're just super open to everyone having whatever style that they need. And I love that you're like, and if you're in traditional schooling, here's some things you can do at home to ensure they're getting real life skills, because like, they're not going to the grocery store together or the restaurant. Like how many kids are afraid to order for themselves at the restaurant, can't even speak. Like those are things that you can teach them at home that they're not getting in traditional school, to ensure that they're getting a whole bunch of different educations and real life stuff. I think it's really great. And so now, when we talked last, you were wanting to expand. And can we talk about expanding now that you've kind of got all this under your belt?
So what that looks like now, Unrestricted has grown into being more parent driven, I would say. I do a lot of mentorship and coaching with the parents on how to start, how to get signed up, basically all over Canada. So I'm really overwhelmed by the United States. There's a lot of like stuff down there. So I'm like,
Shock.
oh, we're going to leave that alone for now.
Yeah.
But basically BC all the way to the East Coast, I know what's going on in each province, and I can kind of help everyone get signed up and know that they are hitting all of the checkmark boxes, that they are legally signed up and they don't have to worry that someone's going to come knocking on their door.
That's
From there, I offer to curriculum, so I can help parents to create unique and personalized curriculum for their children. So the options there are, if you have a multi-grade family, so I have friends that have 3 or 4 children, I can create a curriculum that's based on your lifestyle. So for example, I have friends who work and live on a farm and have 4 children. And so to create a curriculum that touches, math and science and language arts and all of the things for all of those children while doing the things that they're doing. So while they're, washing the dishes or folding the laundry or, checking their chickens, all of those types of things. And then on top of that, I do secondary to that, I guess, is personalized lessons that are individual. So if you, again, have multiple children, one loves Pikachu, one loves Minecraft, one loves baseball, I can make lessons based on that as well. And then further from that, I do a couple little courses with the parents that is kind of like a how-to, like how to create your own curriculum, how to utilize Canva to create the curriculum, how to utilize like certain things within like the computer, the library, those types of things to take an interest and just grow with it and not necessarily lock yourself into the box curriculums that we purchase, because there's so many. And I think sometimes we purchase a box curriculum and we want to go through it day by day by day by day. And that doesn't always work. And we have kind of like that pushback. And
Yeah.
so I teach parents that if you're having that pushback, ask your kids, like, what are you interested in? I have a family right now who has a child in grade 6 and he is just nothing, wants to do nothing. And I created a music curriculum for him. So basically I took science, math, and language, everything I could, and made it surrounding music. So one of the activities was that he had to create a venue in which a certain amount of people can fit, and there was like a bunch of stipulations on what this venue had to be, and then he had to explain why did he put it that way, what is the acoustics going to be, where are the best seats in that house going to be. So now he's measuring, he's thinking about the science of sound, he's thinking about math with the amount of people coming in there, he's got to write it out, so language arts comes into effect, he needs to present it to his family, so then social, like, social studies, all those
social
types of things.
interaction.
Whatever I'm trying to say here. So all these types of things come in. And then on top of that, he told me, like, I really, really liked it, blah, 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 and asked his mom for another one based on real life skills. So he's in grade 6 and he said, I want to learn how to do my taxes. I want to learn how to get a mortgage. And it's all, a lot of stuff he seems very driven to is like business, like how do I make money? How do I get a house? And so now we're creating him another lesson, another little unit that's just fully on that kind of stuff. But again, at a grade 6 level. So what I do is I take the grade 6 Alberta outcomes and I look at what is he supposed to be learning? What is, by the end of grade 6, what should he know?
Yeah.
And then I take that and I break it down. So let's say it was fractions and he was learning, wanted to do taxes. I would then start to bring out ratios, like what is the ratio of how much you're paying and all these types of things. So bring in what he has to learn to what he wants to learn.
Yep.
And then it just kind of creates this like magical thing that you're not fighting with them all the time. And you can just get them. They want to do it. It's like weird. They want to learn.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's like their love language.
Yes, I do that.
Like they're learning love language. Like how are they going to receive it best, right? It's all the same. It's like love, but how, education, but how are they going to absorb it? If a kid doesn't like whatever, something, they're not going to pay attention. But the minute you start talking about one of their interests, I think that's really amazing that you can do that into a personalized level and work with the parents. So like you said, you've been through the frustrations. I'm sure you've caught on this by learning, but also experience as well. Cause I've watched you be like, you know what, today's not the day we're doing this, but he went and picked up a book and started reading all day. And so you know what, I'm calling that a win. And it's like, hell yeah, girl, because that's still doing something. It doesn't have to be. And I think that's the problem with structured school, with kids losing concentration, is like the teachers can't then individually shift to their needs. So it's amazing at homeschooling that you can do that as well and make it really dialed into the individual and really highlight not only life skills, but education as well.
So. Yeah. And that's where, again, a lot of my courses and coaching comes in with parents is, not only teaching them how to get signed up and how to find the curriculum and how to teach, what their kid wants. It's kind of how to de-school ourselves and be like, okay, I see that, yes, he's doing dishes, but what is that? First of all, that's a life skill. And then you can add things in like, okay, can you, why does the soap suds? So you're starting to add, some science in there, and it's just communication. And even then, if you don't want to find or add, or it doesn't feel like the day to add anything in, just note that as a life skill. Like, wow, he's doing the dishes, great, let's move on. And just being able to look at what's happening and finding what they're learning and not kind of stressing about it all the time is the main thing that I teach parents. Outside of that, I've always wanted to, I'm like, and there's more.
And
I've always wanted to create, I think I mentioned it last time, I wanted to create like a school type space, which sounds funny, but I wanted to marry traditional and homeschool, because I know there are parents out there, I hear it all of the time, that like I can't for whatever reason, whether that's time, work. Yeah. Like there's just an array of reasons. So we wanted to create a space that parents could use homeschool, but have it taught by someone else. Yeah. So that's where I kind of hooked up with Megan Garland and a friend of ours, Annabelle Lockie. She's she was a school teacher in Calgary who lost her job for her personal choices. So she is now with us and creating something on the outside of the systems.
Yeah.
Right. And we've got someone from the traditional, school system thinking of like, what do we have to, all the academics that we have to touch. And then we've got myself and Megan, who are both homeschool mamas. And we just can bring in all the homeschool pieces and make it kind of like this, I don't know, it's a really big marriage between.
Holistic, yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's just this beautiful space. And what we did was rented a acreage. So the kids got to come to a house and we run programs at this house on this acreage. It's been absolutely beautiful. Currently, we are in the middle of a move. So we have left our old acreage and we're in the midst of getting onto a new acreage, which is pretty exciting. And then we will be hosting our programs at the new space, which is a little bit closer, more central to a lot of the people that I do know that homeschool. We were a little bit far out, a little bit rural for some people. So moving it a little bit closer is exciting. And then with that, we also host free community events. And so we call those Trailblazer Unrestricted. So that kind of marries restricted learning with Trailblazer. And what that means is it's the Trailblazer programs anywhere. So today, for example, we went to, it's called Kerrywood Nature Center, and the kids just played. It's a nature-based playground. So it's like logs and wood and
Cool.
whatnot. And then we went for a little walk down some paths. And while we thought that we would just walk and go straight to this bird observatory, the children just ran down into the forest. And so we waited about 20 minutes while they played in the muck and got wet and disgusting. And then we finally went and looked at some birds.
I
So
love that.
we follow their lead for most of it. And that's what it's become, is a place for kids to come learn away from their parents. You know, sometimes even myself, it's like, it's nice to send him to a class to learn science from someone else. Maybe he'd like to go and, or there maybe is someone who knows something that I don't. We'll bring in people, for example, someone who knows about foraging, someone who knows about survival skills in the forest. We bring kind of people in that can teach things that maybe I don't have, and I need to go sit in this class also, and we learn together.
Like,
So
I love
that's,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
so neat.
Trailblazer has become. It's this amazing space. Yeah.
And how cool is that to like just timestamp that for yourself, like you said, and end of October 2022 we talked, and I think you were just in the talks of like doing that. I think you had kind of told me what your hope and plan was, and you're like, I'm
Yeah,
not
it
going
was
to say anything yet, but
brainstorming.
I'm just going to kind of like allude to it, to like a year
Yeah.
and a half it being this fully functioning, not just you helping other, kids get parents get set up, but like coaching them through it and teaching them all the things that you guys have learned. And I think it's really cool when you get a collective together in a community, because everyone's going to have a different lens that they've grown up in and life in that they can share. Everyone's experience or what they learned or how they've learned it is all different. So when you can come together, I think you're giving kids a full rounded experience, and it seems more or less than like divide of like this that way. It's like, no, this just works for us and this is the option, and we're falling in always. So if you're more traditional, you can feel safe knowing that we have that set up, like. And if you're worried about the traditional part, like we don't have that as a structure, you know what I mean? So really giving parents all options is just absolutely amazing. And then too, it's like, it's not just there too, right? I think you guys have, it's more like you don't have to just be in Alberta to
No,
like
yeah,
be able to be
that's
helped
good
by you
words.
guys, right?
Oh, sorry, my cat's
No,
about to
that's
come.
okay.
That
We're
wants
used.
to come.
Yes, I had
Yeah,
that
no,
earlier.
we are just currently in the midst of opening some online programs. So we will be offering online classes and online courses, as well as just like those lessons that I create that are a little bit kind of like the unrestricted lessons that I was talking about that are very personalized. These are more broad. So they're, interest-based ones or specifically topic-based. So I just did one that was St. Patrick's Day. It's like a leprechaun trap little lesson for the kids. So it's on there. And so we'll have lessons that they can purchase and then, print. They're like PDFs you can do at home with your kids. So you're getting that Trailblazer style learning at home, which is pretty awesome as well.
Yeah, because that's huge, right? A lot of it's like, oh, I want to do this, but I'm not there and I can't, and like I said, now it's not even like, I think it's a trend. That's not the right word. I just think a lot of people want to be more drastically involved in their kids' lives and trying to find ways to be able to make that work. I think we talked about it last time, like, where people will say, I can't do it. And you're like, you just got to do the things, if that includes switching your shift to night shift on a
Yeah.
weekends, maybe, like, and I agree with you. Like, if that's truly something that you want to do, like, you can be empowered to do it for sure. And there's a lot of people that do that. And again, I think with traditional schooling, the biggest thing is that there's just so many kids now. Teachers are burned out. They're restricted in what they can say and teach and do very much to, like, and we're seeing that more and more. And I think because of all this, like, we don't have to get into the politicals of it, but like the ideologies that are getting pushed where parents are having no ideas, like, I'm getting word from back home that there's things like, they're kind of bringing like younger girls to get abortions without telling their parents, like, not to get politically on that, but those are very dangerous spaces to go into, and it's like, I think parents are being really woken up to the fact that, it's not like it was like maybe when we were in school, and even then it was probably not good, but a lot better than it is now. You can't free speech. Teachers can't have opinions about stuff, but the ones that they can are like kind of insane. And I just think it's crazy. But what would be your advice for parents that want to say, I have a kid in school and I want to homeschool? What's the best time to start looking into it? And what should I do besides contact you? And what would we do? How would that
Yeah,
look?
contact me, of course. I'll let you know.
Yes. Plug.
Honestly, there's no bad time. I just
Cool.
had a meeting with a mama yesterday. She has kids in traditional school. Today they actually were on a PD day, so she came to our event, and her kids played with a bunch of homeschooly kids, homeschooling, and it was
That's
great.
awesome.
And anyway, she's planning to pull them definitely for next year, but she's actually planning to pull them pretty soon here. So basically how that works is you honestly can pull your kids anytime. It's just up to you what that looks like for you. So again, kind of contacting me and we can chat about what that looks like. Maybe you do want to wait till September. Maybe you do want to just do it now. And my biggest suggestion to everyone is to take those few months when you first decide to deschool and just like not worry about the curriculum and the books and all the things, because there's a reason that you're wanting to pull them home. And so just kind of like figure out what your schedule likes, what's your routine like, give them time to sleep and don't, jump them out of bed, because while I absolutely believe they need to learn, schedule and routine and all those types of things, it's also okay to just take a breather and let everyone figure that out. And, I have families, I mentioned before in our last talk, that I have families that do homeschool in the evening. I have families who do first thing in the morning. We are a family that does it kind of mid-morning. So we have like a little bit of a slow morning and slow routine that we do while we read a book. I don't really look at that as doing school quite yet, but we get into the day, and when we really do start to sit down and do stuff, it's mid-morning. And that's a change in our routine as well, which is, again, advice I would give to families if you do decide to jump into it, is really follow the child's lead, because while I'm a unschooler at heart and I can find learning in any situation, he is starting to grow into a person who likes a little bit more structure and routine. So he's asked for some books and some lessons that he can sit down and do. And so we do those. And yeah, he has routine in terms of every day he has a class. He's got like piano lessons and jujitsu and kickboxing and all these things. So he has his schedule that he looks at. He wanted a little bit more. So we actually created a schedule that hangs on our wall, and it literally says breakfast, brush your teeth, get ready for your day, make your bed. Just very simple, but he's really starting to, that's the type of person he is. And while he's my kid, he's obviously a little bit more structured than me. So I had to lean into that and be like, no problem. We can draw you up a schedule. And that's where things like Canva come into play, and why I teach parents about using Canva, because I could show him like, look at all these pretty schedules. What do you want yours to look like? What kind of colors do you want on it? And I made one, we printed it, and then we figured out, what, he wants a little bit more. He wanted actual timestamps, whereas I was like, I'm not really like I know when I have things and I'm going to get to them on time, but to have like it drawn out like that, other than my cleaning schedule, other than cleaning the house, what he needs is a bit much for me. So I had drawn it out, and again, he was like, well, could you just put like in my morning square, could you put done by 9:30 so that I know that I have to have it all done by 9:30? And I'm like, okay. So again, just leaning into like what they're looking for and following their lead and not trying to make it what you think it should be. But yeah, and just going slow into it. It's you got the rest of your life. The one thing I always say is like, you and me, we're both adults, we're at different ages, but we look at each other as peers, and we're the same. We're, it's you and me, but you know different things than I do, and I know different things than you do. And I'm never going to say, oh my gosh, you're how old and you don't know how to do that? You would be like, are you joking? That's not real life. So to say, oh my gosh, my 8-year-old isn't properly putting periods at the end of a sentence or whatever it might be. It's like, so what? Like, do you think he's going to be 20 not doing that? Like, I'm sure he's going to get it at some point. We don't need, that's where like the arbitrary grades in traditional school, it's like, I just don't see that as necessary. We're going to get to it when we get to it. Everybody will learn. It's all good. So just slowing down and following their lead.
Yeah. And to your point, it's a big change, right? Like if they're, especially like maybe if they've never been in school, it's not a big change, but if they have been in school and they went from public school to at home, that's going to be a big change. And so it's like having grace that, like you said, it's not like you're going to military school. You're not, homeschooling is at military school, right? And if you need that, if you need, I'm the same. Like if I need to get all my tasks done, I kind of like to have, I don't anymore need it by the minute, but I'll write all things down and I'll just note my priorities. And then it's like my day goes fucked. I know that the priorities are the top. That's how I manage my job and the podcast and all those kind of things. But I know some people that stresses them the fuck out. And that's why I think traditional school is so hard for maybe back in the day. It probably came to the same thing as like you guys are doing. Everyone was teaching at home and let's come together because more moms probably had to go work in the force. And that's probably how that all started. But as usual, and the government and all those stupid things take over, ruin it and monetize it and make it silly. And, now we're going back to, I'm sure, the same things where women are around each other, or men, like it's not all women. I'm sure there's, stay-at-home dads or dads are involved as well that, maybe have that week off, and that week that they're off, they want to be around their kids and teach them camping things and outside things and mechanic things. Like the sky's really the limit, instead of just being like, oh, you're going to take shop for like 6 months out of the year. And then when you're done, it's like, well, you could do a little bit of shop throughout the year. You don't have to like, and then you can also do woodwork. You're like, I always hated how you have to pick certain electives and you only had like, and I was like, I want to learn how to do all of it. I want to learn how to cook. And so like, why do I only get 1 or 2 fucking core subjects on life skills, but you've got like 75 about different maths and science that I don't probably really need? Not saying that it's not important, but like I'm not going to retain that personally, like, and so
Yeah.
for me, I'm like a hands-on, like, cool, tell me and I'm listening and I get you, but can I do it first and then see, and that's just, again, not traditional. And I was lucky that I was straight A student for a very long time, and that's great, but that's not for everybody. And I struggled and I had to really work through my shit to
Yeah, but
understand.
to that point, I feel like that's the biggest thing, is teaching these kids how they learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that they can learn any of these things at any time. So
Totally.
if you, like you just said, you want to learn all of the things at school, but we're being told this is when and how you can learn it, and that's it. And this is the right answer and this is the wrong answer. Whereas if you teach a child how they learn. So if you are someone who learns by reading books, then I'm going to show you the library and I'm going to tell you that, like, if you want to fix a book, here is this book, or fix a car, here's this book
Yeah.
on how to do it. And, or if you're an auditory learner, I'm going to tell you about podcasts and I'm going to tell you about, audiobooks and, seminars and all these types of things. And it's just, the list goes on. If you are a hands-on learner, then I'm going to say, then let's go figure out where you can learn that. Again, one of the mamas that I work with, her son, the one who's in grade 6, and we're finding his way. We're really, really figuring it out. And he's starting to really, really flourish. And we just spoke to a local, I told the mom, you know what, why don't you just ask where he's doing his music lessons, ask if they would do some sort of internship. Like, even if it's just one day a week where he comes and he learns how to string a guitar, like, just don't put him in the way, but show him how to like wax some strings, show him how to, just some things. And they said yes. So he's going to be going and doing that. And I'm just like, it's really been cool to see this child flourish, because he was one of the kids who really struggled through COVID. They were outside of school. Mom kept them out. She wasn't super happy with things. They ended up having to go back just based on situation. And then the kids were not having a great time. So both, they wanted to be out, but the oldest is in grade 6. So he's been in for a long time. So the transition has been a lot for him. Now we go to the same kickboxing gym. And so just last night we saw them and he was like, hey, like, I was just doing my music lesson on blah, 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 blah. And he's like so excited that I'm like trying not to cry in front of this 12-year-old. I'm like, so good, buddy. Like, and he like walks away. I'm like, it's like really, really cool and exciting to see them enjoy it. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a fun time because you can find these things. And so I think it's cool to, just like I said, teach them how they enjoy to learn, how they want to learn, and then what they want to learn. It's easy. They can just figure anything out.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's like you're a learning coach, right? It's just finding, just like, there's, like you said, there's love language, there's a learning language. What is the learning language that you have? And I don't think it's just as simple as like reading and seeing, like the basics that we know. I think it's kind of like multi-dimensional. So that's why I like that you guys have all those different levels of like homeschoolers that have been doing it from day one with one kid or multiple kids, you know, like with the difference between yourself and May, you know, you both homeschoolers, but she's got a kind of few and some animals and, you know, and you have that. And then you guys are always going out and doing so much, the two of you, right? So you guys take kind of the same, but a little bit different approaches from what I can see. And then you, like you said, you got that traditional that's like sick of it, but has had that, which is super important. And I think you guys are inspiring a lot of people to maybe if they're not even joining you, but doing it themselves or questioning and looking into it. And I think that's what you've always wanted to do, is just plant the seed of possibility and hope that your kids don't have to, if you don't like what's happening and the school system and all that, that you can feel empowered to do that. And say you can't do it traditionally, you can't find a pod, you can't do this. Okay, here's some lessons from unrestricted learning that you can do at home on the weekends. You know, like you said, let's bake together. And what kind of lessons out of the baking? Science, math, like fractions, what, you know, understanding what your kids should be learning and taking that responsibility at home 1 or 2 nights a week could probably make a huge difference. If, you know, you can't go to the homeschooling model, you can still take control of the way your kids learn, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And even to that effect is that when you're doing those things, or if you go and, you know, you get a Trailblazer unrestricted lesson and you do it at home, then you're adding that time with your child that you're going to be talking to them. And that connection that we discussed is kind of missing. If you take that time and maybe you're thinking like, I need to help them with math, so I'm going to get this lesson, I'm going to help them with math. But really what happens is communication.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I kind of like always suggest as well, is within things that I do. I'm always kind of like, I give a list of books to parents and I'm always changing those books. And a lot of those books are surrounding like how we talk to our children, how do we listen to our children and all those types of things. Because if you are still within the traditional system, you want to make sure that that door is so wide open that you know the smallest things can wisp through. You're not worried about anything, you know that you're connected. Because I have a really good friend that recently I was talking to, and she has friends who are still in the traditional system, but her children are so strong in their beliefs and in what they think and their comfort level with their parents to go home and say like, yeah, this happened, this is how I felt about it. It's pretty amazing and it's really cool to witness. It's not really something you see every day. So I just feel like if you do even the slightest bit of like a lesson or an activity at home with your kid, that door opens where you're doing something at their level and they just kind of, the communication flows, you know?
Yeah. And you feel, I don't like the word safer, because then it kind of feels like when you say something safer, then everything is innately not safe and dangerous. But, you know, it just opens up the pathways to talk and to be curious. And, you know, I think that's the biggest thing that is being shunned the last couple of years, is having a curious mind and asking questions, you know, and I feel like, yes, school has a place for that, but if you asked a question that they didn't like, or, you know, you challenge their answer, it's not very well received, right? Where I think in a homeschool setting, it opens up more conversation because that's your kid, right? And so you feel empowered as a teacher as well as a parent to answer those and, you know, guide them to have questions and be curious about what you read. And, you know, and that even if you're wrong about what you think, you're still okay to ask it, you know, like, and still be curious. And there's nothing inherently wrong with being curious about someone's culture or race or gender or who they are, what they're doing, you know, like I feel like there's just such an attack on curiosity. And, you know, we come together more when we're understanding of each other. We could be more empathetic and, you know, so I think that you can open up more conversations and curiosity through the homeschool method than traditional school now. Maybe at some point it was a little bit easier, but I don't feel like now. I feel like that's what I hear. And I hear the negatives of traditional schooling in the sense, like you said, if you're not connected, and they are very strong in their beliefs at that age, it's their time to push boundaries. And but if they're constantly being told something at school and you're not connected, I've heard this a few times, that kids will go home with certain thoughts or ideas, and then they're fighting their parents, and then the people that are telling them are telling, oh, your parents are disagreeing with you, they're bad. And, you know, it's just creating this very scary dynamic where we're separating parents from kids, in whether that's online spaces or at school. I'm hearing a little bit. So I also think that's another reason why there's a push, right, to be able to not just not control, but be aware of
Just be a part
the
of it. Yeah, be
lessons,
able to
right?
like
Be a
everything.
part of it. And if you can't, because I feel like what I'm hearing back from a lot of people too is that they don't get proper answers when they're asking about curriculums and stuff like that. They're getting a lot of pushback, like it's none of their business, stay out of the school, it's not my business, not your business. And it's like, okay, but at the same time, like, what do you mean? You know, if they flip it on the other head, they'd be like, oh, well, you haven't been involved as a parent. It's like, which one is it? Like, I'm trying to be
I
involved.
want to be, exactly.
Yeah, but
I
you
want to
won't
be
let.
involved, but you don't want me to be. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
and that's the thing too
nuts.
with homeschool learning and the homeschool style of learning. Even if you just bring that home when your children are in traditional school, if you bring something like that home, there's so much nuance in it that it's not black and white. It's very, you might ask me a question as students get older, it's like you can open up those two sides. And even when they're younger, you can say, well, there's some people think this and some people think that. And,
Totally.
even my little guy, he has a lot of like existential questions. Like we did lose my sister. He does ask things like, hey, like, where did she go? Like, and he once told me very straight faced that he was extremely religious. And I was like, oh, what does that mean to you? And I was like, where did you even hear this? I was like, what does that mean to you? And he said, well, it means I believe in God. And I said, oh, okay, sounds good. And then not long later, he said, well, how do people get here? And so I said, well, when people believe in God, this is kind of what they think. However, there are also people who believe in this sort of thing and how things, and he was like, oh, like how Pokemon. And I was like, yeah, Pokemon evolution. Yeah, that's, some people believe in evolution and just like your Pokemons. And then some people believe in this. And I was like, and to be completely honest, I don't know which one is 100% right. Cause I wasn't here when that all started, but like, there's this option and this option. And I can tell you information. We can find all the information we can on both sides and we can figure out what we think. And he's like, okay, cool. And I like that part of it, that I don't have to give him a solid answer. And I think that's what a lot of families and people are afraid of, is I can't teach my children, I don't know enough. And it's like, but we don't have to know. That's the whole point. It's like we're learning together and we're teaching, together. And there are nuances, even in terms of like good guy, bad guy, right? Like there's always nuances there. And it's not just black and white of like, even as they get older and they start learning things about more, my guy's only not eight now. He's not quite 9. And so we're not quite talking 100% about like the deep thoughts about war, but his grandfather was military for 25 years. So he is very aware of certain things. But as they get older, speaking on those nuances and, having them be able to have those conversations, that it's not just like this was the good guy and this was the bad guy. Because maybe that is 100% the truth, but it's also to look at things through different lenses, right?
Absolutely.
And I think in homeschool settings, we get that opportunity a little bit more, or even the time to do it. Because maybe within school, they might have those questions. But realistically, the time for them when they have this period of time in school and then they come home, and of course you have them likely in some extracurriculars, or they have something to do at home or family life or whatever, to be able to take that time and really look at the nuance in the two sides, it's just not there, right? Yeah. So I really love that part as well.
Yeah, because too, if you think about it, it's like history facts on the books that they're teaching in school, right? Where it's like, a lot of the world has nuance, like you said, even when it comes to war, right? Like when we even say like specifically the Ukraine war a couple years ago, right? What they were teaching in school versus what we are seeing and knowing, are probably two very different things. And even now with like Israel and Palestine too, right? Like you just never know who's teaching one, where you could just be like, hey, you know what? There's people that think this and there's people that think that. So they're open to understand that everything isn't just black and white, and that there could be multiple truths, and also that people have different experiences, like you said, based on their lens, right? Like, and that's such a beautiful thing to show them, to create an idea of like empathy and understanding that maybe their original thought isn't everything. And then once they get new information, they're more open to take that in, dissolve it, and see that side where it's like, when you have this structure, like, well, this is how this war went at this time, and it's so that's how it's been, and that's what I learned in school for 12 years, or that's how it was. It's very hard to fight people's like original bias, but when you are teaching in a setting to understand that there could be nuances and that everyone's going to see it a little bit different. Still, of course, like obviously we don't want murder, but if guy's murdering people a bunch of times, then how is that okay to murder him? Well, because there is boundaries and limits, right? So like, not saying you need to teach that to your child about murder. I'm just saying like, like having the understanding, you know what I mean? Like, get back to your good guy, bad guy, like there's some bad guys that have done, bad things, but sometimes they did good things too. And it just shows kids more of a 3D vision of the world, instead of just being like, when you read something that is for sure fact, don't ever think otherwise. It's like, you could read a book that could contradict that too, right? Like, it's good to have
And I think the
ideas,
big
but
thing
not
with
being
that is
so
that
rigid.
exactly. And I like I said, I think the big thing with that is having a next generation that's able to communicate with one another and really truly listen to each other's side of things,
Yes.
because they understand that there's 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides, 17 sides. There's a side that we can't even see, right? So, to teach them that and have like, maybe that sunshine and roses, but I truly think that if we can teach them a little bit of being able to see the nuances in the world, that conversations and communication and things like that can be a lot different. And I just, on top of that, I think they can stand in their beliefs a little bit stronger when they've really looked at all sides. Because like you said, if you're going somewhere and someone's telling you this is the way it is, but you're questioning that, you don't trust yourself because instinctively everyone else around you thinks differently. So you're like, I can't be right, because again, in the traditional system, we're very used to everything is the same and there is one answer. So if you're looking this way and you're diverging this way, suddenly you just feel wrong and you can't really trust your own gut instinct. Whereas I think if you teach people to really look at all sides, then they can decide for themselves what is what is right. And sometimes it is just black and white. It is, this is the answer, and other times it's not. So I think if we at least teach them to look at all sides, they'll figure out when it is this is the answer and when it is a nuanced situation. So yeah, I don't know if that's again just kind of sunshine and roses and maybe we live in the unicorn world, but I really think that if we teach them, then they'll do it.
I think it'll help, like you said, open conversations. Like as adults now, people have struggle having uncomfortable conversations with themselves, and I think a lot of the times people are fearful or angry and all that because they just don't know things, right? And so a curious mind is going to look at all sides. A people pleaser is too, and then somebody with anxiety, but that's another point.
Yeah, that's
but but it still opens up that you look at different pathways of different options and stuff. And when you're shown that as a child that there are different options, there are other lenses, you also learn emotional regulation by product of that too, right? Because then you can understand, okay, I know that this person's being bad right now, but I understand that people have different experiences and they come through different lenses. So perhaps that this is just through their lens and it's a projection instead of something. And obviously we need to self-aware, but most of the time people are just, doing their own thing, and what they're doing, how you get treated, is a byproduct. People are super, I don't think most people go out and go fuck everybody else. It's like, oh, I'm healing, or I'm trying to do this goal, or I'm trying to do this thing, and it, then you kind of. But if you're purposely being an asshole, that's a whole other conversation.
I mean, some people are, right?
And some people really are. Yeah, exactly. But, for the most part, I think, and so as then you're growing up, you're like, oh, wow, there's different options. Oh, wow, things could just be projection. It's not just me. And like, oh, wow, I have all these different views. So I feel pretty strong that I know all the different religions. I know what they stand for. I feel comfortable in this one. Or, hey, maybe someone else brings another one to the table and you're like, oh, I'm open to that. And then you question, you judge, you self-aware, you check in. And I think by doing that, you're providing more for your child than just the you're teaching them how to emotionally regulate and not take everything personally, which is something I think everyone struggles with, even just as adults right now. But the younger generation is really struggling on grasping reality, because they just look at the reality that's on their little, box, where it's like, I feel like homeschooling really pulls them away also from that, like, online digital world, and more focused on, and I'm not saying you're not using those things, but it's like books and papers and physical things that you're learning, and I'm sure there's a piece of digital computer component as that's appropriate, but not everything being here. You know what I mean? And I think that helps them understand basic skills, and then you can teach them the digital. When you just teach them digital, what happens when your computer goes down and then you have to do the math in your ledger, you have to handwrite your inventory at work, like there's still a component of real life things.
There's so many pieces of that, right? Like in terms of the emotional regulation, like if something happens, so for example, B has friends and things can happen. So they had a little tiff and we were at the snowboard hill and I ended up finding B and he was really upset and they were really upset, and it was kind of like, all right, everyone meet at the bottom of the hill. And I basically was just like, team meeting, like, what is going on? Well, it sounds like you're mad because this happened. And is this right? And they were all like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so we have a couple options here. Either we can decide that we just don't care and they're all going to walk the other way, or we can decide that we care enough about one another that we want to talk about it. And they decided that they all wanted to go together and talk about it. So they were going to sit on the lift together and talk. kind of worked out that the kids had to leave, so they didn't get the chance. And then later that night, the mom and I had been talking, texting back and forth, because she's like, here's what they feel, like they're kind of upset. And I was like, here's what B feels. So it was really nice because we could be involved. Whereas if something had happened at school, like chances of us being that involved, likely not. And now there's two sides of that. Of course, I don't want to be too involved, but I also want to be able to guide a little bit. So we were able to say, well, do you want to talk to your friends, and do you feel like you need to apologize? All children involved decided that was the case. So we let them video call each other. We weren't really a part of that. And they discussed whatever they needed to discuss. And then they went to bed and everyone's good. And so it was kind of one of those situations where we got to say, well, this is their side, this is your side, and really have them talk it through, not just brush it out of the table or,
kids
that
kids.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And and we, again, we were saying, kids are being kids, and I can see, maybe this is, his side. This is maybe why he's feeling that way. Can you understand that? Maybe how would you feel if you were on that side of it? And kind of like look at both sides. Again, look at all of the sides and have that empathy for that other person. And really, again, just really look at it like, well, you are my friend. And what does that mean? Because it means I care about you. So I'm going to treat you well. Just like, and, again, we're friends as parents. So we can say, if his mom said that to me, like, this is what I would want to say to her. I don't know how you want to deal with it, but this is how I would want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And sort of that kind of aspect of it, which is, it's like, yeah, again, it's just a really big piece to be able to teach them that emotional regulation and
communication.
All that. And yeah.
And like you said, stuff that you wouldn't be able to take advantage of those moments if you kind of weren't there, right? And then giving them a space, letting them guide how that is, but still being like, like, if you don't want to, okay, but they're your friends. So are you sure? And then you're teaching them that, yeah, okay, it might be uncomfortable, but you care about these people. So you kind of want to fight for those things, right? And without like forcing them to do it. And sometimes people just need a breather. Like, I'm a vicious bitch. So sometimes, no fault to Grant, I just need 10. I just need 10 because I'm out to kill. You don't deserve
teaching
it.
them to know that, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, we went to Panorama together. We all stayed in one big house together. The kids had a room where they had bunk beds. My guy's an only child. Like, It was a lot. Like, the one night he came down, he said, Mom, can I sleep with you and Dad? And it was like, yeah, honey, for sure. And the next morning they're like, did Bryson not sleep with us? It's like, was he not in here? And I'm like, no, B slept with us. And he's like, oh, why? I'm like, he needed a minute. And so to teach them to recognize, instead of, get to the point where you're now going to get grumpy and mean and whatever, recognize that like, this is too much and I need to take my time, which is, again, another really cool thing that we get to do. We get to take all these moments to breathe.
Yeah.
Teach.
Take a second.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In everyday life. And I love that. I just love all of this. I knew this was going to be such a good talk, and it's like, if I had kids, this is what I would be doing for sure. Are there any hurdles that you feel like you find? Like, is there any negatives that you kind of had dealt with, just to kind of give everyone an informed consent if you are going into homeschooling?
Absolutely. So one of the hurdles can be socialization, because it really, again, I said to the mama that I worked with last night that it's all on you, right? So now, although those aspects of, church or dance or whatever, those parts aren't going to disappear, but on top of driving them to those things, you do now have to think about their daily time. So again, me, someone who has an only child, I have to look at our week and say, this is when he has classes. This is when he's going to see other kids. This is when he's going to get time. Now, is that enough? Is there a balance there? Is he going to want more, because we have had weeks. Just last week, he had an allergic reaction to something and he was home all week and wasn't great. He got a little, we both got a little like at each other, because we're not used to that. We're very busy people. And so to be home like that and him not be able to go see people, it was like, so I do have to make sure our week is like enough that we can both be seeing other people and doing other things, and he can go to his classes. But that's on me, right? So it's on me to like look at where he can go to classes. It's on me to see like, is every part of it getting touched? And then it's on me to also work in the school part of it. So am I going to do a curriculum? So it's on you to create all of that schedule, right? And that can be a lot. And sometimes, especially if you're someone who also has like, a business, or you're on an acreage or something like that, where there's an added hurdle to getting to these places and these classes, it can feel like a hurdle. It can feel like a lot. And then that's where things like Trailblazer come in. And that's where things like Trailblazer Unrestricted come in, because you know that you can look at a calendar and someone else has put it together for you. You don't have to think now. You can just look and be like, hey, there's a bunch of people headed to a park on Friday. I'm going to go. We're adding that to our schedule. That's where my kids are going to see some other kids this week. And if that's all that happens, that's all that happens. It's not going to kill them. You know what I mean? It's not the end of the world if they don't see children every single day, because their socialization is so much more. They socialize at the grocery store when they're speaking to the tellers. They socialize at, even just the gas station, anywhere. You can have your children doing these things, restaurants, anywhere, with family, even just to have like dinner with grandma, having them communicate, maybe even creating something where they have a list of specific questions they have to ask her, because now it's socialization in terms of getting to know someone else, right? And so there's just so many aspects of it, but it is on you. So that's a hurdle. It can be a hurdle. The other hurdle that I feel like I encounter sometimes with my little guy. Now, again, I don't want to say very lucky that I only have one, but because I only have one, I'm able to focus and really like look at, okay, this isn't working, and pivot and do a lot of things. And so that can be a bit of a hurdle when your child is pushing back on what you're thinking they're supposed to be learning or what you're trying to get them to learn. And that is a hurdle that's what I work with parents with, is that hurdle is actually ours, not theirs. And it's for us to kind of like take that moment and be like, okay, like you said, you see on my stories where I'm just like, I thought we were doing this. I sat down and wanted to do this. And he was just, and rather than fighting all day and making math the absolute worst thing we ever did, I said, fine, do you want to go bake a banana bread? And he's like, yeah. And I just kind of pretend, I can't find, this cup. I can't find the 1 cup. Sorry, I can only find the half cup. And he'll be like, oh, so I need to get 4 of them, then. Yeah. And it's like, yep. So, he just did math, and he's reading the instructions, and, all these types of things where I'm like, okay,
and learning a skill.
We can just do it another way. So,
and learn how to make banana bread.
Hurdles.
That is like a number one checklist on for a future husband. Know how to make fucking banana bread, right? So just setting them up for success for the future,
Exactly. Like, listen, there's one time a month your wife is going to want brownies.
100%. Extra chocolate.
Exactly. Add a little pumpkin seed on top for her hormones. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Add a picture of a puppy. You're fucking golden, But right? It's like, it's getting to know your kid on that level and building a whole relationship with them that you might not have before. And like you said, not every family can do that. I think I don't believe it's a full privilege, because I believe that people can definitely make it work, but I don't think it's as easy as it was in the past. And it's such a shame because of that, because it's like, that's when it was like weird and out of style, when it was probably more obtainable for most families, because most families didn't have 2 people outside the house. Right. So I think, but again, there's other ways you can always adapt. If you can't do that, can't drop a pod, totally get it. But you know what? There is, take them out of school one Friday and bring them to an event, or, find ideas, like we have a petting zoo here, the kangaroos, like you could learn so much. And then you could, like you said, it's on you. You have a little thing, and the people there teach them, like they teach them the stuff, and ask them, okay, when you learn that, you could teach them to, let's say, listen to get information, not just listen to listen. So, hey, well, you're going to ask the lady, how long do kangaroos usually live? How, things like that, where it's like, they'll probably be stoked to ask those questions, because they're going to go see kangaroos. And now you've taught them how to be social. You've taught them how to listen, to understand. You've taught them something about like animals. You taught them how, so many different things. And you had fun with your kids at the same time, and I think too, one thing that people don't understand is that you can also kind of get some funding, if I remember correctly, for those extracurricular activities. So if that is something that you're like, well, guys, that's fucking great, but I can't afford it, you can actually apply for those things. Is that correct?
You can here in Alberta. So some provinces, unfortunately, the one you live in, doesn't love to support that. Now, there are pros and cons, because in BC now, while you don't have funding, it is a lot. I don't want to say a lot more free, because we do have a lot of freedom here, but there's not like an overseeing school board or anything. You just sort of let BC Education know, hey, I'm going to homeschool, and then you're on your own. There are things you can do to get help if you need to. So again, if someone was curious, I can kind of give you the rundown. I do a free 15-minute call, so I can kind of just quickly give you the rundown of like what's up. And then in Alberta, we do get that. So if you decide, you can, again, two options. You can decide to be not part of a school board and just do your own thing. And there are tons of people who choose to do it that way. Then there are people who choose to sign up with a school board. So we have, they're just certain school boards in Alberta that accept homeschoolers. So basically what they'll do is they're an overseeing board, and you kind of meet with them. You meet with a facilitator 2 times a year. And it's very, very simple. You pick the school board based on how you want to homeschool. So I pick my homeschool board based on one that will allow unschooling, which means I'm pulling from everything and doing whatever. And it's like, it sounds messy, but he's learning a lot. And it's not like I'm saying, hey, I have this curriculum and we're going to flick through it. And there are school boards that prefer that. And so I just don't go with those ones for myself. There's families that prefer that. So again, those school boards, you would meet with them and say, this is the curriculum we're going to use. And then at your meetings, they would say, okay, where are you at? Like when your first meeting happens, they'd say, how far are you in your curriculum? And then your second meeting happens, how far did you make it, kind of thing. I do not want that. That's not what works for our family. So we work with the school board who allows unschooling. And the reason I've decided to work with the school board is for multiple reasons. That's how we get our funding here in Alberta. And we pay into our taxes. So that money, in my opinion, is already ours. So that's why I really suggest taking it. It's there. It's yours. If you don't, it's just going to someone else
or government.
You might as well take it. And the other reason, not that I like to talk about the dark sides of anything, but the other reason is because it covers your butt a little bit in terms of, we do live in kind of like an interesting world that we don't always know what's coming down the pipe and what might happen and what kinds of rules might come out. So I feel like if I have at least someone who checks in with me 2 times a year, then if even something as simple or scary as someone deciding like, oh, weird, there's a child outside at 1:00 in the afternoon, I must call someone. At least I then can say, no, he's a homeschooler. Like, here's our school board. And they are, when you meet with them, well, they're not checking like what we're doing because I'm an unschooler. They sit with us and they come to our house and they see where he lives. And, they see that he's okay. And they chat with him to like, is he learning things, or is she just like locking him in a room and showing him when we're here, kind of thing. Like there's that little bit of cover your ass, if that makes any sense. So I really suggest that, just because there are, like, I'm very involved in a lot of aspects of homeschool and a lot of I like to know what's going on. And there's some legal things that go on in the States. And if you follow, it's called HLDSA. So the homeschool something. Sorry, I forget. If you follow them, they talk a lot about, again, the covering your butt side and things that happen. A lot of it can be in the States where, CPS has been called and the parents have to prove what they're teaching. And in a lot of the states, there's some states where there is no governing bodies and it's very hard to prove what you've done or what you're doing. And while I don't like to think about that at all, I also understand that we live in a world where just kind of having that peace of mind is nice for me. And then obviously the money part of it, that's my money anyways. And then on top of that, while I'm a very active mom and I create my own community, and I've started like a homeschool co-op type space, because we're not a school. We're not a school. So we're just a co-op. But I also love that when you're with a homeschool board, they do have like field trip options that I don't have to always plan. And so something might come up that he actually went to a climbing class that I didn't plan. It was just kind of nice. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. So I signed him up for it. Or they had an online art class that he could just do on his computer at home that I, again, didn't have to organize or find the teacher or do any of those things. So that part of having a homeschool board is pretty nice as well. But yeah, so there's all those options, but the funding is available here in Alberta.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, there are some provinces that do offer it and some provinces that don't. And it's just, again, completely nuanced. Every province is different.
Yeah, but at least you know that now. I remember when we first started, you're just like, I just know about me in Alberta, but I want to know about every single province. And I'm just so proud that you went and did that. And you did what you said you were going to do, girl. So I am so proud of that. One more question I do have for you is, if you could go back at the beginning of your journey of homeschooling, what would you tell yourself?
To chill. I would just be like, it's going to be okay. Because I think every homeschool family can attest to the fact that when you're starting, you're like, what am I doing? Because anyone who's going to step outside of that, the normal path, you immediately are like, what am I doing? Can I do this? I mean, when you become a parent, you feel like, what am I doing? Can I do this? So I kind of collaborate or say the two are the same a lot in that I would just tell myself to relax and that he's going to learn. And I would keep reminding myself the things that I do now, is that to talk to myself like I would talk to a friend. And when I'm having those moments of like, oh my gosh, I'm not teaching him anything, he doesn't know anything, like look at myself in the mirror the way I would look at my friend Brooke and be like, you know what, your kids are awesome. They're happy. They're learning. Like, you seem very connected with them. Like, it's all good, And I would just really keep reminding myself that. And to be completely honest, I probably wouldn't have sent him in 2020. Now I think he has a lot of friends and he met a lot of people and we learned a lot of things, but I don't think we needed it. I don't think we needed it as much as I thought we did. So that's,
and you learned.
I don't.
You got the story right,
Yeah.
and I think too it was a joint decision. I think you felt good with that, and I think it's nice to be like, yeah, we gave it a try so that we know, and this for sure confirmed that is the path, right? Like it wasn't crazy traumatizing, but for some
like
kids,
no
it really
regrets
is.
about it. Yeah, like no
But some
regrets,
people
no,
can.
like again, it's not like I'm like, oh, I wish we didn't, but when looking back, it's like, maybe we didn't need to do that, and maybe that's something I would do differently. And I would definitely go back and just tell myself to just like breathe and not really think about, because you do, and I still do, and I still have to catch myself
Of course.
comparing, right? Like having that moment of like, oh, that guy's got some pretty neat writing, but then I write myself and then I look at like Megan's writing and my writing and then Annabelle's writing and I'm like, well, for goodness sakes, like
Nobody does.
like none of us can write the same, so whatever. So I just kind of let it be.
I think that's great to point out too, right? Like as adults, we also don't know things and we don't know what we don't know. So having grace on the kids, grace on yourselves, this is a big change. And you have a whole community now that is being built just around this exact thing where it's either Instagram accounts that, do even like there's so many more camps in that kind of we're teaching them to go do outdoor things and it's really coming back. When we were younger it was like Girl Guides, summer camps, and I feel like it kind of died down for a bit, and maybe that was the pandemic. I don't know. I don't feel like it fully was. I feel like it's the digital age that really kind of like took over, but I think parents and our generation is seeing the damage by not teaching kids to go outside and touch grass and be inventive outside and build a fort and how does fire work, how do you cook food, all the things that we learned in like brownies and Girl Guides. Like I don't even know if they still have brownie. Do they? Like are they a social media thing? Like do they all just get together on Facebook or like like and so what's cool is that I found in a lot of our followers are people and parents that have those summer camps, that have those weekend things, and I'm seeing the comments of parents where kids actually would rather go do that than hang out with their kids at a birthday party and stuff like that, which I think is just so fucking cool. And so I think the more this goes, the more those little things will pop up where it's like, hey, you can come to our farm and learn how to do this, and taking those opportunities. And I just think over the next 10 years, especially if school boards and school systems do not change and we continue seeing this insanity of restrictions and censorship, but pushing for things that we don't really understand yet, I think this is going to blow up in a way where it's going to go back to more at least joint, a little bit of both, where at least parents are really being like, okay, now they're saying kids don't learn fuck all in school. It's like you don't get a pass or everyone just gets pushed through. And I think that's such a disservice. It's like, yeah, you don't want to hold kids back, but if they're not learning the essentials of life, which I don't think they are in traditional school anyways, but you know what I mean? Like at least the basics. And if they're not, and they're just getting pushed through, you don't do that in homeschooling, because you're not set by that like percentage. And are they obtaining this? Are they, and I love like, how you're saying take your kids out to the grocery store and maybe give them coupons, maybe give them a budget, depending on their age, teach them how to do that because I never was taught that. Like you said, this kid in grade, he's 12 years old, he wants to learn taxes. How fucking great is that? Because I still don't know at 37, y'all.
Right. And that's the thing. And again, those are lessons that we're creating. Like even when you mentioned grocery store, I literally have a lesson created that's about to go up on the Trailblazer website that is specifically geared toward grocery stores. It's geared towards, having them head to the grocery store, make a list, maybe even have them create a meal plan at home. It also has science aspects where you're talking about ingredients and then geography, like where are things coming from? How are they getting here? Like, and then talking about like, wait a minute, can we grow this at our house? Like what's, but does it make more sense to get it local? Like, is there anywhere that we could get this locally? So again, just so many things that can be learned within the grocery store and just anywhere.
Unlimited.
You can find lessons anywhere. Like
Yes,
they're all over the place, but
I love that. I
yeah.
love that. And so
And
if
again, I'm
any,
a bit of a dreamer, but I feel like
yeah.
that's the thing is I really want there to be that split, right? I would love for one day, as much as I'm a realist that I'm like, okay, I feel like schools are not headed in the direction that I want them to be. I also am a dreamer in the sense, and that's where Trailblazer came in, is that I want there to be that half and half. I think it would be beautiful if kids could go to school 2 to 3 days a week and then not go the rest of the week. I think it would be beautiful, even if families wanted to do partial traditional and
homeschool.
partial Trailblazer or partial traditional and partial homeschool or partial whatever. I really believe it would be beautiful if we could create a school system and a school atmosphere that was whatever it needed to be.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's rainbows and unicorns, and I understand in a system where we're all in the same room and we need to make it uniform. It's not going to work. I get it, but we can make it work. I know we
Yes,
can.
I think we can. And I think we'll see that in every industry, right? With the medical industry, like, Western versus natural. Like, I do think that everyone's starting to understand that it's not one way or the other, none's right or wrong. It's really synergistic and what works for each individual. I think I don't want to go to Western medicine, but boy, am I happy that it's there in a second that I need it and I don't have any other options. You know what I mean? Like, you can
Can't
see
fix a broken
value.
arm.
Exactly, right? You can see value in all of the things around you. And I think it's just ensuring that it aligns with you and that you're not being like pushed, against using something you don't want to or whatever, right? And same with schooling. Like, if you don't feel comfortable and you're not involved in the school boards, you're not involved in their school and you have the time or the schedule or, like you said, even if it's online stuff at home at night on the weekend, you can take control of your child's learning. And it doesn't sound like they're getting much out of school these days or being held to standards to, not that you should be, but I do think there is some way that you need to understand that that kid is learning. And when I'm not saying that grades are necessarily the way to understand that, but like you can tell and teachers can tell and parents can tell when they're involved that their kids are struggling at understanding things. So maybe if that's the case, looking at part-time homeschooling, like maybe if they're struggling at math, maybe you can go get some unrestricted and Trailblazer at home activities, or like I said, pull a kid out on a Friday and reach out to another mom that's homeschooling and be like, hey, maybe we could do this together. Like you said, I know stuff, you know stuff. Maybe you're, let's say even just like you and Meg, like you guys she's versed in like animal stuff. So can the kids come over for the morning and learn stuff about animals? In the afternoon, I'm going to go take them and I'm going to teach them how to bake something or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
having open conversations, being open to other ways, finding your people in your area, or even online now. Like, there's so many more options. So if anybody wanted to come and find yourself and Trailblazer, where would be the best place to reach you guys at?
So the best and first place is always on social media. We're pretty active there, both at Unrestricted Learning. That's my social media Instagram. And then Trailblazer is at trailblazer.academy.ab. So that one's a little bit difficult, but apparently there's a few Trailblazer academies out there. So we had to pick what we picked. And then we also have our websites. You can click both our links in our bios to get those, because honestly, to probably say them, blah, 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 you're not going to remember anyways. So if you just head to our social medias, click a couple things, you'll find us for sure. And like I said, I do free 15 minutes. So if you're someone who's even curious about homeschool and you're like, I'm not even considering, I don't want to start, but I just like want to know a little bit more, I do a free 15-minute call and I can give you the lowdown.
Yeah, I love that. Any questions? Is there anything else that you want to add today that maybe we didn't cover? Or do you feel like you covered your and B story
I
pretty good?
feel like we've covered a lot of bases. I feel pretty good. Just the main thing is to not, don't stress and find your community.
Yeah, absolutely. And ask questions and be curious and and maybe it's not for you and you don't have to be upset with that, like maybe it isn't for
Okay.
you, but the options there. I just want people to have hope and understanding that it might be a huge adjustment, but it's not impossible and a lot of people are doing it. And again, if you can't afford it, if you have reasons, you're working, you're in your career, all the whatever reasons, totally all understandable. But
Yeah.
then just make sure that you are making sure that your kids are learning stuff, so you're setting them up for success and not just relying on the other systems to do that. As parents, you're empowered. I know I get it, I'm a cat mom, I can't really say shit, but the moms that I do know, I know a lot of moms that are homeschooling. Actually, I'd say more of my friends homeschool than not, and I can see them all doing it, and so that's why I'm just like, hurrah, hurrah. But understanding you don't, but it's in your hands. Like you said, it's up to you, and you have the power to do it. So reach out to girls like Lindsay. There's lots of people in the homeschooling community. If you tell her your area, I'm sure she can connect you to people in that area as well, because it's just growing and growing. And I just cannot wait. And we won't wait for another year and a half to have you back on, but maybe we'll get you back on in the fall and see where things are, because I know you guys will keep growing. And where does this online, like, I just love it. Super proud of you guys. Keep going. Thank you so much for your time today, dude. I love it so much. I cannot wait. When you have a cat thing, like, have some cat training or something online, you just let me know, and I'll have all three of mine attend. Better, maybe some behavior things. That would be cool. But until we have you on next time, see you guys later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys so much for the support. I cannot thank you enough for being here. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, please give me a follow at the Be Real Babe podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Pinterest. You can also find me on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. Until next time, guys, bye!